We use content in a very focused way, given that we are an e-commerce company and we're focused on pushing the transaction on a website. Generally, our focus is to try and distract the customer as little as possible. So we use content really as a commercial vehicle. So we're talking about deals, descriptions, etc. But we deliberately try to stay away from too much content from an editorial perspective, because we believe at this stage of the market where we're in at the moment, that could be a distraction, and we really try to focus on pushing the transaction through and focus on conversions.
Okay, so maybe I'll just explain a little bit about background. So our business is all about facilitating real estate transactions. So I guess our content strategy is aligned to that. We try to create content that helps to facilitate real estate transactions. So whether it's providing information that the buyers or sellers need as part of the process. So it's all about that. So we tend to, real estate purchase process is very information intensive. So we try to generate as much information for the users so that they can make the decision very easily as part of the process. The other thing is we do use a little bit, you talked about marketing mix, so we used especially editorial content quite a lot to position the company as an expert in the market, because obviously being the expert creates a trust between the user of the services and the company. So that helps us to position the company as the expert in the market as well.
I work for Mozat. We are one of the biggest mobile social network in the Middle East. We're based here, and in the development and HQ is in Singapore and China. So we do mobile, we do apps, and we do games. So our content strategy is a mix. We don't think we're Apple. We are not going to tell you what you need. But at the same time, we don't completely listen to what the customer wants, because sometimes they really don't know what they want. So we have done sort of a half-half, and then a quick launch, and then an iteration, a feedback loop, and then make adjustment. Because we're mobile, we could push updates. So we have the luxury of sort of doing A/B testing. So we launch it, we get angry feedback, and we adapt accordingly. So in general, we're very malleable. So I wouldn't say we have a hard-coded strategy at the beginning.
Great. So Henry, maybe if you continue on the next question, which will be more about how do you distribute your content today? So one thing is generating platform-based content, but how do you make sure that your users and potentially new users will get the content? Yeah, please.
So I'm in mobile. So again, it depends on the content and the strategy. So we use the App Store. So I'm sure all of you know Apple App Store, Google Play, Samsung Hub, if you're on the Samsung phone. So that gives you breadth around the world. You just have to adapt to the local languages. So that kind of strategy would be a bit more simple, clear, easy, a mass market game or app, like a puzzle game, like Candy Crush. So many people are using it. And we do have a local market strategy, usually with local operators, the incumbents, where they are obviously only strong within their country. So we're very big in Middle East, so our content is completely in Arabic. Our customer support's in Arabic. We try to follow Sharia. We follow Sharia law. So that is an example of you can still get the content through the store, but the actual content is very specific, and people in Singapore would never use it, and it wouldn't unless you could read Arabic and you're really keen on certain things. So it depends also on the distribution channel.
We try to distribute where the customers are using the content. So currently it's mainly obviously desktop browsers and mobile. So quite a lot of investment is currently going to mobile, because people, when they're looking for real estate, they are not necessarily home or in the office. They could be on the road viewing the apartments in themselves. So we will try to put the information in their hands. I guess the other aspect is whether you're doing more push or pull. So we also try to push people the content when necessary, so people can personalize the content that they want to be pushed, so that they're getting it without having to actually even come to the platform. Then the third thing that we're doing is distributing content through partners. So we have some content partnerships with some of the bigger players like Yahoo, Microsoft, Singtel, that where we push especially our editorial content. And that's working quite well because they have quite a lot of readership in some of the, especially in news sections and things like that.
The way we distribute content and our strategy around that very much depends on so where we stand in the conversion funnel. So that means that in the different channels we have a different content strategy depending on how far we believe that stands from the actual transaction. So that means in direct response channels like SEM, CRM, we try to be very again, focused on messages that are centered around the transaction. So emails are generally focused on deals, specific messages that will stimulate and drive transaction rather than stimulate inspiration or broader goals or brand. Where it goes more towards brand and inspiration, for instance, our social channels, we send out very different kind of messages and content. I think a lot of people, when they started with social, thought, hey, that's a great place where we can push our deals and try to drive sales. And most of us have found out that it doesn't really work like that. Social is a very different channel. People generally want to be entertained in order to stay interested. And that's what we try to do with images, with messaging, trying to be light-hearted, but we generally stay away from deals and talking about the opportunity to transact there. So it very much depends on at what moment in the conversion funnel we're talking to people, and that's how we adjust our content that we're pushing out to the customer.
Okay, great. So you already touched a bit upon it, but maybe you have something to add before we take the mic the other way back again. So how do you differentiate your strategy of content depending on the channels you're using? Because I know, for example, you're both using your newsletter as well as your social media or pushing through other channels. So how do you differentiate in your content depending on that? Is that purely specific on the spot in the conversion funnel, or is it also depending on the channel?
Well, they tend to correlate because specific channels have a specific function in the conversion funnel. SEM, for instance, tend to be closer to the end of the funnel, whereas social is more at the beginning of the funnel as a more generic channel. Similarly, when you talk about sort of above the line strategies, you tend to be at the very open end of the funnel, so that's where you tend to be very generic, much more brand focused. So yeah, emails are a good example of where you are at the narrow end of the funnel, and you try to be very specific.
I guess in our case, the two key differences to differentiate the content is between mobile and the desktop. So mobile, obviously, because the size, you have to concentrate on the key content that you want to select. So it's a lot less content, but just concentrate on the key things that you want to highlight to the users. The other thing, we haven't really customized the content itself so much, but we were looking at things like we've noticed that people on mobile don't want to read very long things, so we try to probably create things like if we have editorial articles, probably do a shorter version for mobile, for example. So that kind of things we're looking at.
For our
Can you hear him? No? Yes. It died.
All right. So we compete against WhatsApp, WeChat, KakaoTalk, Line. They're all horrible. Please don't use them. So we're trying to innovate beyond Line. I think they're at the cutting edge. They have like 100 million users. I think we're more innovative and quicker than WeChat, for example. So we're trying to be the best. So that's sort of a very utilitarian approach. For the game, yeah, it's hard to define fun. It's hard to define what is the next big hit. If I knew Clash of Clans and Angry Bird would be the next hot thing, I would be sitting here as a Rovio. So, but in terms of game, there is no hardcore formula. But the short answer is we are trying to make something fun, engaging, and hopefully innovative for the games part of it.
Interesting. So, especially for you, Henry, and also for the other guys, because your business model is also seen in other countries, how do you see the content strategy differ across cultures?
Okay, so similar to my first comment, if it's a broad-based distribution channel, we have, like our instant messaging app, anybody can use it. The local content, I'll write in Arabic to somebody who's Arabic or Chinese, etc. So that is generic and not very specific. Our games, I was mentioning earlier in another room, our most popular game in the Middle East, which is mostly a desert, if not all of it, is a fishing game and a sailing game. And yeah, that was a complete left field. It was a wonderful hit. And that was the one I would say would be the big loser. And from there, we're able to make it social. You could gather more fish, of all things, to have a great fishing boat, and you put guards to protect your fish from your friends. And if you're angry with them, you bomb them with a nuclear bomb on a little boat. So all of that makes no sense and was a massive hit. That's why I don't know what the next hot game is. So that is because the users told us what they wanted. So that's why the game is that way.
So we run in 4 different countries in the region, and I guess all the websites that we run, or the platforms we run, they're all local. So each country has, because real estate market is local by definition, so they all have different content. Obviously the content is very similar in terms of structure and what the content is. It's real estate and things like that. So the structure is not necessarily that different. Only thing we've noticed is we just recently analyzed things like editorial, what are people actually interested in, and we've noticed that the top articles that people are reading in Singapore are very different than they are in Indonesia, for example. So we noticed that in Indonesia people are much more interested in lifestyle, for example, versus Singapore, where people are much more investor and looking at the property market from a purely transactional point of view. So it's quite interesting that there are definitely some cultural differences as well, what people are interested in.
It's an interesting question, because we're also active in 4 markets, and we're organized in a very local focused way. That means there's a lot of local control over things like content, but also to some extent design and the way content is structured. So that gives you a very immediate and clear view on how that content reflects the local culture in the market. If you compare Australia to Singapore to Hong Kong, where you probably have a hierarchy from Western culture to mixed culture to probably the most Asian culture in Hong Kong, you see that the content and the way that's laid out and structured is also very different. Some of that is leads to points to things that some people are probably familiar with. In some of the Asian cultures, there's more focus on more color, more playful design, a less dry layout of content. Whereas if you go to the more Western style of presenting information, it's more about the content itself, making sure that the deals are structured in a clear way and that you can go straight to your target. Whereas in our Hong Kong market, the local organization has actually developed a sort of an extension of the brand, which is sort of 3 figurines, which help people understand how the deals work and point to where you can find specific things. So it's a very playful approach that in the eyes of people in another market may look very strange, but it works very well there, and vice versa. You see the same thing. So clearly there are differences. At the same time, I think also it's very difficult to say what is the right approach, because it's very you can, of course, A/B test a lot of things, and that will teach you a lot of things about what you can do right and wrong. But it only can teach you so much, because you also need to have a vision as to what's the right way to approach things. And A/B testing generally gives you very small insights on little differences. And if you don't have the vision, then it will never bring you to the goal in the end.
So this testing leads me to the next thing. How do you guys use data in your analysis of content and developing of new content and strategies?
Okay, I think we're following this left-right thing, right? So I'll just continue.
Otherwise, let's start with Jani.
It's very much okay. We use data very intensively. We use data. I mean, I touched upon A/B testing. That's one thing, one area where we use data very intensively. But we also use data to personalize. Specifically, when you talk about offers, when you talk about CRM, what do you put in your email? How do you make sure that that's as good as possible match with what people want to see? We use a whole range of data points, of touch points there of what we know about the customer, and that's about demographics. We use third-party data to match our data with what is known in the local markets, but we also use dynamic data. How do customers use the website? What do they look at? What do they shop for? What do they buy? All those data points we use, we combine, and based on that, we figure out what's the smartest way to arrange content and how to match that as good as possible with what people actually want. And we've tested that extensively, and we've seen that personalizing offers and targeting towards people's backgrounds and wants leads to very clear uplifts in conversion.
So yeah, we're doing very similar things. We're probably not as advanced as a lot of the travel companies are, but it's just, the principle is very similar. You monitor very heavily what the users are doing, and you try to adjust based on that what is interesting to the users and what works best in terms of whether it's the content itself or how you present it. So it's there are a lot of industry standard techniques like A/B testing and analytics tracking, how you monitor that, and that's definitely long term how the website will be evolve in the future as well.
Half our engineers are from the server side, so similar things. The only a different thing we do is we're mobile, and we have your MSISDN or your mobile number, and hopefully you opt in, and with the cooperation of the carrier operator, we know where you're located. And it turns out we're an instant messaging app, but boys being boys and girls being boys, girls being girls, people have used it in various ways. One is gathering, one is dating. So that was all captured, and therefore it's very useful for us to adapt our services for the next service and the next iteration of our instant messaging.
Great. So Jani, maybe you want to start the next one just to break this left-right thing. So I know you guys are focusing a lot on data and having your own internal editorial team and stuff. So how do you see that giving you an edge, and what exactly in terms of content is it that gives you the edge over competitors, and how does it help you stand out?
Well, there's multiple aspects of that. So obviously being somewhat an e-commerce site and people come to shop for properties on the website, I guess the key thing is to make sure that we have the most comprehensive content to start with. So we cover as much of the market as possible, so people have the selection available on the website. So that's the core content anyway. People come mostly to the website to search for real estate. The other content like editorial, we try to cover news as fast as possible. So we try to be sometimes faster than even the main media outlets in the countries. And we also then use obviously, like I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of the content, especially the real estate related content, we use it as a position in the company as a property expert in people's mindset. So if we are able to do that, obviously it gives us a certain edge over competitors who might be more generalistic, or they might lack the breadth of the content on their platforms.
Well, for us, it's all about finding an optimal match between what the customer wants and what we're offering. And that's not only about who the customer is, but often it's also about timing and seasonality. One thing that we found out, for instance, by analyzing data is that there are specific segments in the market who have a different seasonality. To give a very simple, straightforward example that everyone will understand, the expatriates in Singapore who have families tend to fly back to their home countries when their kids have summer holidays. So that's when you see a very specific demographic movement in a product offer match, and that's something that where you have to time yourself to make sure that you get the lead time right, approach people at the right time with the right offer, and then you maximize your returns. The complexity in that picture is a lot higher than this simple example, but in general, the approach that we follow is that we have segments that we have identified in our customer database, and we look at who they are, so the preference that they have in terms of destinations, but there's also a seasonality behind it. So specific offers at specific times, taking into account when do people book. Once you optimize that perfectly, you get the optimal conversion level, and that also puts you at an advantage against competitors. Because if you play that game right, it means that you're getting the most out of the market. Your customers are not exclusive to you. In our market, a lot of people shop around and look in different places, so that means that once they look at you or when they have subscribed to your email database and you manage to get them the right product at the right time, you definitely have the competitive edge.
For the space I'm in, it's ultra competitive, so it's really hard to have a competitive advantage, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, we try to follow our passion, so hopefully making something that we like, that we think consumers will like. And the one key factor is we are in the mobile space, mobile social, so we incorporate social, but also in the future we'll be incorporating the camera in your phone, the pictures in your phone, and location that I alluded to earlier. And of course, your phone is always with you, so that will be forthcoming.
Great. Is there anything you guys have done in the past, any kind of content that you guys went into that turned out to be harmful, or anything that just didn't work out as planned? Anything you can share?
I wouldn't say harmful, but we've obviously tried a lot of things in the past and that haven't worked, so I can probably mention a couple of things. So I guess in the past years, we've tried to create content just for the sake of it sometimes, so whether it's for just to have some sort of resources or guides, and I think that the learning there is that if the content is not high enough quality, probably don't bother doing it, so it needs to be high enough quality to really add value to the user. Another thing we tried is, which doesn't really work that well, is we have a kind of a lifestyle section on the website that is somewhat related to the real estate, but because it's not so closely related, it doesn't really work that well. So I think it's good to keep to your core focus, I think, in terms of content as well.
Maybe it's not specifically about content, but if I can take campaigning sort of into the content sector, I won't say harmful, but throughout the Zuji history, we've always tried to be interesting and at times a little bit cheeky in order to gain and keep people's attention. And we used to run a campaign which was called "Get Out of the Dot," because obviously Singapore is a small place, often referred to as the little red dot, and the campaign was centered around messaging pointing to sort of the mundaner things in Singapore and reasons to get out and refresh. So one specific example I can mention was about when Singapore introduced new water. I'm not sure if that's familiar with everybody, but at some point of time, Singapore started to recycle water. Not sure how to describe it, but sort of from internal sources in the country. We had a campaign running around. One of the angles that we took was, well, given the fact that we're now doing this, it's probably a good reason to get out for a while and visit another place. I won't say it was harmful, but it was one of those moments where you get mixed reactions, and some people like it and some people don't. But yeah, just to give an example of where you have to sometimes balance between trying to find the edge and coming very close to crossing it.
Well, we made a game several of my jobs ago when I was in Korea. So we made this game. I don't know if this is harmful, so this might completely be irrelevant. So it's a golf game, and all the characters start out as old men. The better you play, the younger you get, and it gets better. So there's nothing harmful there. But if you do really well and you win, or you get a hole-in-one, you turn into a girl in a bikini. I didn't authorize that. My female CEO authorized that. So we got a lot of flack, not being politically correct. We launched in the US, so I'm American, so I could say this. Hypersensitive Americans just beat us up pretty badly, but it was a massive hit in Japan. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we did okay.
Great. So we're about to be out of time. So just the last round, Henry, maybe you want to start, is where do you see content going in over the next 6-12 months? Maybe just for your own company, and then we can take it from there.
Boy, that's a hard one. Contextual, as mentioned, right place, right time. I really don't know. I mean, we're guessing what the consumers want, but at least in the mobile social space, it's changing so much that I shouldn't be saying this to the CEO, but I really don't know where we're heading. We're trying different strategies.
Yeah, I agree with Henry. It's hard to say in the longer term. I guess short term, we like you mentioned, mobile is changing the game very quickly, so we're just trying to keep up with the pace, to be honest. So a lot of effort is going on mobile development and seeing how we can best offer the user experience for people who are using mobile platforms.
I'll stand in line, and I agree with the trends. Mobile is obviously a key trend, and in travel it's very important. And right place, right time has a lot to do with that, because people use mobile, and it leads to different patterns in terms of purchase. It also means that, for instance, lead times are getting shorter. There's a famous example in the US, a company called Hotel Tonight, which is entirely focused on people who travel and want to book a hotel on location for the night itself. So they've built their whole business model around that growing pattern. And these are very key movements that indicate that it's not only technology that is changing, it's also affecting how people buy, when people buy, and if you don't follow these movements quickly enough, where people buy, you'll be out of business. So these are obviously very key developments that we have to stay on top of, because they will change businesses and they will disrupt businesses. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going to happen in the near future.
Great. And with those last remarks, thank you so much.